In the quiet vastness of the universe, there is something that is always present, yet never seen. It does not shine, does not reflect light, and cannot be touched. And yet, it is quietly holding galaxies together, guiding the motion of billions of stars, and shaping the entire structure of the universe we live in. It is called dark matter, one of the deepest mysteries that modern science is still trying to understand. In some way, dark matter is like the invisible parts of the human mind, what Carl Gustav Jung once called the unconscious. You cannot see it directly, but you can feel its influence in the way the world moves, and even in how you experience reality itself. Welcome to Stories for Sleep, a place where stories about science, the universe, and the human mind are told slowly and gently to help you relax and drift into sleep. Here we do not rush. We move through each idea, each image, like soft waves flowing through a quiet night. In tonight's journey, we will explore a strange truth. Most of the universe is not what you can see. Stars, planets, and galaxies are only a small visible surface, while the rest is an invisible structure, silent, yet immensely powerful. If stories like this bring you a sense of calm, consider subscribing to Stories for Sleep so you won't miss the next journey. And now, take a slow, gentle breath. Relax your body as we begin the first part of tonight's story. Something that cannot be seen, yet shapes the entire universe. Something invisible that governs the universe. If you look up at the night sky in a quiet moment, you will see shimmering stars, faint glowing bands of distant galaxies. It all seems complete, as if that is the whole universe. But strangely, what you are seeing is only a very small part of reality. Most of the universe, the part that holds everything together, is completely invisible. Scientists call it dark matter. You cannot see it. You cannot touch it. It emits no light and reflects none. And yet, it makes up most of the mass of the universe. In a gentle way, you can imagine this like standing before the ocean at night. You only see the surface, soft ripples reflecting moonlight. But beneath that surface lies a vast world, deeper and mostly invisible. Our universe is the same. Stars, planets, galaxies, everything we can observe are like the surface of the ocean. And dark matter is the deep water beneath, silently shaping everything. It creates the gravitational pull strong enough to keep galaxies from tearing apart as they spin at incredible speeds. It determines where galaxy clusters form and where there is only empty space. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, this mirrors something within the human mind. Jung suggested that much of what shapes our thoughts and behavior lies in the unconscious, a part we cannot directly see. You cannot see the unconscious, but you can feel its influence. In emotions, in dreams, in decisions you cannot always explain. Dark matter is similar. It is not visible, yet it is present in every motion of the universe. When a galaxy spins, it is feeling the gravity of dark matter. When clusters form, they gather where dark matter is dense. In other words, dark matter is like an invisible framework, a silent skeleton supporting the universe. And interestingly, without it, the universe would likely look completely different. Galaxies might never have formed as they do. Stars might not gather into stable systems. And perhaps life itself would not exist in the way we experience it. But rather than feeling unsettling, this idea can feel very gentle, because it reminds us that in the world and perhaps within ourselves, there are always invisible things that matter deeply. Things that do not need to be seen to exist, do not need to be touched to have influence. They simply are, quiet, steady, always present. As you lie down, closing your eyes and letting your mind slow, you might begin to notice that you also contain such dark regions. Not a frightening darkness, but a quiet, deep space where thoughts settle, where emotions soften. Like dark matter in the universe, that invisible part within you is also holding things together in a very subtle way. And perhaps as we begin to accept these invisible aspects, we also begin to feel more at peace. Dark matter, the invisible skeleton of the universe. If you imagine the universe as an endless space, where stars and galaxies drift randomly, that image is only partially true. In reality, the universe is not chaotic in the way we once thought. It has structure, a very delicate structure, almost entirely invisible. Scientists now believe that behind every galaxy, every cluster, every stream of matter we can see, there exists a hidden map. A map not drawn in light, but shaped by dark matter. You might imagine it as a kind of gravitational landscape, where dark matter is dense, space forms invisible valleys, regions where gravity is stronger, where matter gathers. Where dark matter is sparse, space becomes like empty plateaus, where nothing holds together. And within these invisible valleys, galaxies begin to form. Gas and cosmic dust do not gather randomly. They are guided, quietly, precisely, by the structure of dark matter. In a gentle way, you can imagine the universe as a vast fabric. Dark matter creates invisible folds in that fabric, and visible matter, stars and gas, simply flows along those folds. It does not choose its path. It follows what is already shaped. From Jung's perspective, this reflects something deeply similar in the human mind. He suggested that our thoughts and actions are not entirely free in the way we imagine. They are often shaped by unconscious structures, patterns deep within us. Just as matter follows dark matter in the universe, our thoughts may follow invisible patterns within the mind. We feel like we are choosing, but sometimes those choices are guided by deeper forces. And interestingly, this is not something frightening. It can feel calming, because it suggests that not everything is random. There is an order, a structure, an invisible map connecting everything. Without dark matter, galaxies might never form. There would be no seeds for matter to gather. The universe might remain a vast emptiness, with no structure at all. But because of dark matter, the universe can organize itself, form clusters, create vast filaments stretching across millions of light years, build structures beyond imagination. And when you reflect on that, you may begin to feel a quiet sense of peace, that within what seems like vast chaos, there is still a deeper order, an order that does not need to be seen, an order that simply exists, silently shaping everything, like your heartbeat, steady without your attention, like your breath, flowing naturally. And as you lie there listening, you too may be drifting within an invisible structure, not in outer space, but within your own mind, a structure of emotions, memories, and slow-moving thoughts. And like dark matter, it does not need to be clearly seen. It only needs to exist to keep you balanced. And in that quiet stillness, you may begin to feel something very gentle, that you are part of this structure too, not separate, but a small part within something much larger, a vast network where everything is connected, whether we can see it or not. And within that connection, nothing is completely isolated. Nothing is entirely random. Only slow, quiet currents, guiding everything in their own way. The first evidence: galaxies that rotate wrong. If you imagine a galaxy as a vast spiral made of billions of stars, you might assume that everything within it follows familiar rules. Like planets orbiting the Sunday, the farther away from the center, the slower the motion. That is what our intuition and classical physics has taught us for a very long time. But then when scientists began observing distant galaxies in greater detail, they noticed something was not quite right. Something subtle, yet powerful enough to shake our entire understanding of the universe. In galaxies like the Andromeda Galaxy, stars at the outer edges far from the center do not slow down as expected. Instead, they move almost as fast as the stars near the core. And if you think about it, that should be nearly impossible. Because based on what we can see, the amount of luminous matter there simply is not enough gravity to hold those outer stars in place. If nothing else were there, those stars should have drifted off into space long ago. But they do not drift away. They remain, orbiting steadily, as if held by an invisible hand. And in that moment, a profound question begins to emerge. Are we missing something? A part of the universe that cannot be seen, yet has mass. A part that emits no light, yet creates gravity. A silent presence, strong enough to hold entire galaxies together. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, moments like this do not only happen in science, they also happen within the human mind. There are times when we observe our own lives and feel that something does not quite make sense. Emotions arise without a clear cause, decisions we cannot fully explain, reactions that seem disproportionate. Like stars at the edges of galaxies, moving faster than they should. And in those moments, the answer may not lie in what we can see, but in what we have not yet seen. Jung called this the unconscious, a deep part of the mind where quiet but powerful influences reside. Dark matter plays a similar role in the universe. It is not visible, but it explains what cannot otherwise be understood. When scientists plot what is called a rotation curve, they find something unexpected. The curve does not decline with distance. It remains nearly flat, a clear sign that the mass of a galaxy is not just in its visible parts. It extends far beyond, in an invisible form. A vast halo surrounding the galaxy, a layer of dark matter we cannot see, but can feel through its effects. And this changes how we see the universe. It is no longer a place where what you see is all that exists, but a place where most of reality lies beyond direct perception. And rather than making the universe frightening, this realization can feel surprisingly gentle, because it shows that even when we do not understand everything, there is still a deep stability. Galaxies continue to spin, stars remain in place, everything continues. Supported by invisible forces we are only beginning to recognize. And as you lie there listening, you may notice something similar within yourself. Not every thought needs to be explained immediately. Not every feeling needs to be understood right away. There may be invisible forces within you, quietly holding things together, like dark matter holding galaxies. Silent, stable, always present. Dark matter surrounding galaxies. When we look up at the night sky and imagine a galaxy, we often picture a luminous spiral, billions of stars orbiting a bright center. But what the eye cannot see is actually the largest part of that galaxy. Surrounding every galaxy is not empty space, but a vast structure, almost entirely invisible. A halo, a massive envelope made of dark matter. You can imagine this halo like an invisible ocean within which the bright galaxy we see is just a small island rising above the surface. The visible part, stars' nebulae dust, is only a fraction. Most of the galaxy's mass resides in this halo, a structure far larger, extending far beyond any light can reach. It is this halo that provides the gravitational force needed to keep the galaxy stable. Without it, the stars at the outer edges moving at high speeds would not be held in place. They would slowly drift away, and the galaxy would lose its form. But that does not happen. Galaxies remain stable, balanced, as if gently held within an invisible embrace. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, this image carries a deep symbolic meaning. In Jung's psychology, a person is not defined only by what they are consciously aware of. Behind the light, clear thoughts and deliberate actions, there exists something deeper, a vast, encompassing layer, the unconscious. Like the dark matter halo surrounding a galaxy, the unconscious surrounds and supports our entire inner life. We do not see it directly, but it is present in every movement of the mind, in dreams, in sudden emotions, in choices we cannot fully explain. And like the halo, it is not empty. It is a structure, a complex system shaping how we exist, returning to the universe. What is remarkable is that this dark matter halo is not far away. It is very close. So close that we are inside it. Our solar system and Earth is moving within a vast dark matter halo surrounding the Milky Way. You cannot feel it. You cannot see it. But you are within it, right now. Like a fish that does not notice the water it swims in, because water is everywhere around it. Dark matter is the same. It is not a separate object you can point to. It is an invisible environment in which everything exists. And this brings a very quiet feeling, a sense of calm, because it reminds us that larger structures are supporting our existence without needing our awareness. You do not need to think about gravity for Earth to orbit the Sunday. You do not need to understand dark matter for galaxies to remain intact. Everything continues, silently. And perhaps in our lives as well. Not everything needs to be controlled. Not everything needs to be fully understood. There are invisible halos, deep structures keeping us stable in ways we may not always notice. And as you lie there, in the quiet of the night, you may begin to feel something very gentle, that you too are being held in some way. Not by dark matter, but by the natural rhythms of your body, your breath slowing, your heartbeat softening, your mind gradually becoming still, like a galaxy turning within its halo. Everything within you is returning to balance. The role in the early universe. If we travel backward in time, very far, returning to the earliest moments of the universe, we would not see luminous galaxies like those of today. There would be no soft spirals, no shimmering clusters of stars, only a hazy, hot and energy-filled expanse, a universe still very young, still trying to shape itself. At that time, the matter we are familiar with, the atoms that would one day become stars, planets, and even our own bodies, had not yet been able to come together. Radiation was still intense. Light constantly collided with particles of matter, pushing them apart, preventing them from forming stable structures. Like dust in a strong wind, they could not settle. But within that chaos, something else was happening. Something unaffected by light, unaffected by radiation. That was dark matter. While ordinary matter was swept along by the turbulent energy of the early universe, dark matter moved differently, more slowly, more steadily, and quietly. It began to gather. It did not emit light, so light could not push it away. It did not interact strongly with radiation, so it could silently form regions of higher density. Regions that would later become the foundation of all structure in the universe. You might imagine this like a field after a storm. While the wind is still blowing light, leaves are scattered everywhere. But small, heavier stones gradually settle and form stable points. Dark matter was those stones of the universe, silent, enduring, unaffected by the surrounding chaos. And as the universe slowly cooled, as radiation weakened, ordinary matter could finally begin to gather. But it did not gather randomly. It fell into the regions that dark matter had already created, gravitational seeds, places where gravity was stronger, strong enough to pull gas and dust together. And from there, the first stars were born. The first lights appeared in the universe. The first galaxies began to form. All of it began from invisible structures that dark matter had prepared long before. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, this image carries a very deep meaning, because within the human mind there are similar seeds. Early experiences, deep memories, unconscious patterns. They form very early, sometimes even before we can consciously recognize them. Like dark matter in the early universe, these structures are not always visible. They do not shine, but they create gravitational fields in the mind, tendencies and inclinations that our later thoughts and emotions will naturally fall into. And over time, these seeds can grow into larger structures, beliefs, personality, the way we see the world. Just as regions of dark matter became galaxies, and this brings a gentle sense of calm, because it shows that formation, whether of the universe or of ourselves, is not entirely random. There are preparations, silent foundations, structures formed before we become aware of them. And as you lie there, in the quiet of the night, you may be in such a phase yourself, a phase where not everything is clear, not everything has yet taken shape, but somewhere within, the seeds already exist, quietly, patiently, waiting for the right moment to grow, just as dark matter once did, in the earliest days of the universe. It is a beginning in silence, no dramatic explosion like in films, no bright light from the start, only a very slow process, almost impossible to notice unless you observe long enough. Dark matter did not create the first light. It did not shine to announce its presence. Instead, it chose another way, a very quiet way to prepare the foundation. It gathered little by little, without rushing, without needing to be seen. But each small movement contributed to a larger structure, like planting a seed in the soil. For a long time, nothing appears on the surface, no visible sign. But beneath, a process is unfolding. Roots begin to form, structure slowly takes shape, and when the time comes, life reveals itself. Dark matter in the early universe was like that. It did not create stars, but it created the conditions for stars to exist. It did not shine, but it determined where light would appear. From Jung's perspective, this closely reflects how the human psyche develops. What we express outwardly, thoughts, actions, words, is like the light of the universe. But behind it is always a deeper preparation, a process unfolding in silence. Small experiences accumulating, unnamed emotions, memories resting in the unconscious. All of these, over time, create a kind of gravitational field within the mind. And then, our thoughts fall into those regions. Our decisions form from them, just as ordinary matter once fell into dark matter regions to form galaxies. And this brings a very gentle feeling, because it reminds us not everything important needs to happen immediately. Not all growth needs to be visible. There are phases where the most important thing is simply forming, quietly, slowly, naturally. As you lie there, in the stillness of the night, you may be in your own early universe, a place where not everything is clear. Not every answer has appeared, but somewhere beneath the surface, structures are forming, seeds are being nurtured, and you do not need to push them. You do not need to rush. Just as dark matter did not need to rush to create the universe, it simply needed to be there and allow everything to unfold in its own rhythm. And perhaps, in that slowness, we find a very deep kind of peace, a feeling that everything is happening at the right time, whether we can see it or not. The cosmic web. If you could leave Earth, travel beyond our galaxy, and look back at the universe from an almost unimaginable distance, you would no longer see individual galaxies. You would not see scattered points of light. Instead, you would see something entirely different, a structure, a form, a vast network stretching across space. Scientists call it the cosmic web. In this web, galaxies do not exist in isolation. They lie along long filaments, streams of matter stretching hundreds of millions of light years. These filaments connect at nodes where massive clusters of galaxies form, and between them are vast empty regions, voids, deep, quiet expanses where almost no matter exists. At the largest scale, the universe looks like a web not woven from visible matter, but from dark matter. The filaments are where dark matter is concentrated. The galaxies we see are simply the light clinging to those filaments. Like morning dew on a spider's web, you do not see the thread, but you see its shape through the droplets. The universe is the same. We do not see dark matter, but we see its shape through the arrangement of galaxies. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, this image is deeply meaningful. because Jung suggested that the human mind is not a collection of isolated thoughts. It is a system, a network, where ideas, memories, and symbols are connected in ways we do not always recognize. Like the cosmic web, the mind has filaments, invisible connections between experiences, nodes where strong emotions gather, and voids areas we have not yet explored or fully understood. And just like the universe, most of that structure is invisible, yet it still shapes everything. Returning to the cosmos, what is remarkable is that the cosmic web was not designed. It formed naturally, from tiny fluctuations in the early universe, from dark matter gathering, from gravity slowly pulling everything together, little by little, over billions of years. And gradually, a vast structure emerged. Not chaos, but a deep order, a quiet organization we are only beginning to understand. And as you think about this, you may feel a gentle sense of peace, that within the vastness of the universe, there are connections. Nothing is entirely separate. Every galaxy is part of a larger network. Every star belongs to a greater structure, and perhaps so do we. In life, we sometimes feel like small, isolated points, but maybe we too exist within a kind of web, a web of relationships, experiences, memories, and emotions, a web we do not always see, but that is always there. And like the cosmic web, it does not need to be fully understood. It only needs to be felt. As a gentle connection, a quiet flow, linking everything together. The history of discovery, from doubt to acceptance, every great scientific discovery does not begin with certainty. It begins with something subtle, something not quite fitting, not an obvious error, but a small deviation, enough to make someone pause and wonder, is there something we are not seeing? The story of dark matter began like this. In the 1930s, Fritz Zwicky observed galaxy clusters. He noticed that galaxies were moving far faster than visible mass could explain. They should have flown apart long ago, but they did not. They remained stable, bound together. And so he proposed something bold. There must be a form of matter we cannot see, yet which holds most of the mass. He called it dark matter. At the time, the idea was not accepted. It was too unfamiliar, too difficult to test, and perhaps too different from how people understood reality. According to Carl Gustav Jung, this reaction is natural. The human mind tends to hold on to what is familiar, what can be seen, measured, confirmed. The invisible is often doubted, not because it does not exist, but because it does not yet fit the map we use to understand the world. So dark matter remained a quiet hypothesis, until decades later, in the 1970s, Vera Rubin studied galaxy rotation, and once again, something did not match expectations. Stars at the edges moved too fast, and this time, the evidence was clear, consistent, repeatable, across many galaxies, and slowly, the scientific community began to change, not suddenly, but gradually, step by step, like a new idea slowly finding its place in the mind. According to Jung, this is like something from the unconscious rising into awareness, at first rejected, then returning again and again, until it can no longer be ignored. Dark matter never appeared directly, but it revealed itself through patterns, through motion, through structure, through data we could not explain otherwise, and eventually it was accepted, not as a strange idea, but as a fundamental part of the universe, and this brings a gentle sense of reassurance, because understanding does not always come immediately. It takes time, patience, and the willingness to accept that some things are not yet clear. And as you lie there, listening, perhaps you are in a similar process. There may be things in your life not yet understood, feelings without names, thoughts not fully clear, but that does not mean they lack meaning. Perhaps they are simply in the stage of doubt, a necessary stage before understanding, just as dark matter once was. And maybe you do not need to resolve everything tonight. You can simply hold the question gently and allow it to guide you, how we see the unseen. There is something very interesting in the journey of exploring the universe, that sometimes to see something, we do not need to look at it directly. We only need to observe what it influences. Dark matter is a beautiful example of this. We cannot see it through telescopes. It emits no light. It has no clear shape to observe. And yet, we still see it in a very subtle way. Through motion, through light, through the indirect traces it leaves across the universe. When scientists observe the motion of stars within a galaxy, they realize that these orbits are not influenced only by the visible matter. There is another force, invisible, at work. Stars move faster, more steadily, as if they are traveling within a gravitational field far larger than what the eye can see. Similarly, when observing galaxies within large clusters, scientists notice the same pattern. Galaxies do not drift freely. They are held, guided, by a mass that cannot be seen. But perhaps the most beautiful way we see dark matter comes through light, a phenomenon known as gravitational lensing. When light from a distant galaxy passes through a region of space with large mass, it does not travel in a straight line. It bends, gently but clearly, like light passing through curved glass. The image behind becomes distorted, stretched, bent into soft arcs. What is remarkable is that sometimes the regions causing this bending do not contain enough visible matter to explain it, and yet the light still bends, which means there must be an invisible mass, something that cannot be seen directly, but strong enough to curve the very path of light itself. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, this image carries a deep symbolic meaning, because in psychology, we also cannot directly see the deepest parts of the mind. We cannot observe the unconscious as we would an object, but we can recognize it through what it bends, the way we feel about a situation, the way we react to a person, the way a memory appears, not fully clear yet still influential. Just as light bends when passing through a gravitational field, our experiences can be bent by invisible structures within us. And if we observe carefully enough, we may begin to sense the shape of those structures, not by seeing them directly, but by noticing small shifts, subtle deviations. Returning to the universe, what is remarkable is that by observing millions, even billions of light rays from distant galaxies, scientists can map dark matter, a map not based on emitted light, but on how light is distorted, an indirect way of seeing, yet remarkably precise. And this brings a gentle sense of calm, because it shows that even what cannot be seen leaves traces, not obvious traces, but enough to be recognized if we observe with patience. And as you lie there, in the quiet of the night, you might try to observe yourself in the same way. You do not need to clearly see every thought. You do not need to analyze every emotion. Just notice what is shifting, what is moving, the gentle curves in your experience, because sometimes those subtle changes are signs of something deeper, like dark matter, never appearing directly, yet present in every movement of the universe. And so seeing is not always about using the eyes. There are other ways of seeing, slower, more subtle, and sometimes far deeper. In daily life, we are used to trusting what is clear, what appears before our eyes, what has shape, color, and defined edges. But the universe, in a very gentle way, seems to teach us something different, that some realities can only be recognized through their influence. You do not see the wind, but you see leaves move. You do not see gravity, but you see things fall. And you do not see dark matter, but you see light bend. You see galaxies move in ways that cannot be explained without it. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, this is also true of the inner world. We cannot directly see the deepest parts of ourselves, but we can recognize them through subtle expressions. A familiar feeling without a clear reason, a strong reaction to something small, a dream that feels real, even if the images are unclear. All of these are like curves of light in the mind. They do not directly tell us what exists, but they suggest that something is there. And if we listen long enough, observe gently enough, we may begin to see what once seemed invisible. Returning again to the universe, gravitational lensing is not just a scientific tool. It is also a gentle reminder that light, the very thing we trust most, can be bent. Not in a misleading way, but in a way that reveals a deeper reality. And this brings a quiet sense of wonder, because sometimes distortion is not error, it is a signal, a way the universe tells us there is more than what you see. And as you lie there, in the stillness of the night, you may begin to look at things in this way. You do not need perfect clarity. You do not need everything to be aligned and easily understood. Sometimes, the slight misalignments, the moments that are not entirely logical, the feelings that cannot be fully explained, are where the deepest meaning resides. Like light bending, not to hide the truth, but to reveal something deeper. And perhaps, as you allow yourself to feel this, you are learning a new way of seeing, not only with your eyes, but with attention, with listening, with a gentle presence in each moment. Experiments on Earth. If the universe is a vast place where dark matter silently shapes everything, you might think that this story belongs only to distant realms, galaxies millions of light years away, clusters beyond human reach. But strangely, the search for dark matter is happening very close, right here on Earth, even deep beneath the ground. In places that are dark, quiet, and almost completely isolated, scientists have built special laboratories, not to observe the sky, but to listen for the smallest possible signals. These laboratories are often located deep underground in old mines, inside mountains, or beneath kilometers of rock. The reason is simple, yet subtle: to avoid noise. On Earth's surface, we are constantly surrounded by high-energy particles from space cosmic rays. They collide with the atmosphere and the ground, creating background noise that makes detecting faint signals nearly impossible. But deep underground, the thick layers of rock above act as a natural shield, blocking much of that interference, creating a quieter space, a place where very small signals have a chance to be heard. And in that quiet, scientists wait, not for an explosion, not for a flash of light, but for something almost imperceptible, a tiny interaction. A dark matter particle, if it exists as we imagine, could pass through Earth, through our bodies, without leaving any trace. But sometimes, very rarely, it may collide with an atom, a very weak interaction, very brief, almost impossible to detect, but enough to create a small signal in extremely sensitive instruments. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, this image is deeply meaningful, because in the human psyche, to see the deepest parts of ourselves requires something similar. Not noise, not forceful analysis, but quiet, a space where small signals can emerge, subtle emotions, passing thoughts, faint intuitions. If the mind is too noisy, we miss them, but with enough stillness, they can become clearer. Returning to the laboratory, scientists face a great challenge. The signals they seek are incredibly weak, so weak that even the smallest vibration or a trace of radiation can distort the result. They must build delicate systems to remove noise, cool instruments to extremely low temperatures, isolate vibrations, and wait for a very long time, just to catch a single tiny signal. And this brings a quiet feeling, a sense of patience, an acceptance that some things cannot be forced. They can only be received when conditions are quiet enough. And as you lie there, in the stillness of the night, you may be in your own laboratory, not beneath the earth, but within your mind, a place where, if you allow it, you can listen to the smallest signals. No need to search, no need to try. Just create a little quiet and let things appear, like scientists waiting for a dark matter particle silently passing through. And if you pause and feel this more deeply, you may realize that this is not only a story about science, it is also a story about learning to listen. Because in the modern world, we are used to strong signals, clear information, direct evidence, fast results. But dark matter does not work that way. It does not answer immediately. It does not appear when called. It simply passes quietly, leaving no obvious trace. And to recognize it, we must change our approach, not searching for something large, but noticing what is small, subtle, almost imperceptible. And according to Carl Gustav Jung, this is also how we approach the unconscious. It does not speak in clear words. It whispers, through images, through feelings, through fleeting impressions. And just as scientists build underground laboratories to remove noise, we also need an inner space quiet enough to notice those signals. A space not filled with constant thought, not driven by urgency, simply still. And returning to the experiments, there is something beautiful. Even without certainty, scientists continue. They build more sensitive instruments, improve precision, keep waiting, not because they are sure of success, but because they feel something is there, worth seeking. And that quiet belief is gentle, not loud, not forceful, just a steady presence. That some things in the universe take time to be understood. And perhaps, in life as well, there are questions without answers, things not yet clear, parts of ourselves not fully understood, but that does not mean they are not real. Perhaps they are simply waiting for a moment quiet enough to be recognized. And as you lie there, slowly drifting into sleep, you do not need to find answers, no need to analyze, no need to understand everything. Just create a little space, a little quiet, like a laboratory deep underground, where all noise fades. And in that stillness, something small may gently appear. What could dark matter be there is something quietly fascinating. As we move deeper into this question, the more we learn about dark matter, the more we realize something very simple. We still do not know what it is. Not because we lack effort, not because we have not searched long enough, but because some mysteries in the universe do not easily reveal their nature. And so, instead of a single answer, we have many hypotheses, different ways of imagining this invisible presence that makes up most of the universe. One of the most common ideas is WIMPs, weakly interacting massive particles. If they exist, they would have mass, but interact very little with ordinary matter. They could pass through everything, through planets, through our bodies, without leaving a trace. Only sometimes, very rarely, they might touch an atom, a small interaction, just enough for scientists to hope to detect. There is also a gentler idea, axions, extremely light particles, almost not carrying energy in the way we are used to. Not loud, not colliding strongly, but existing like a subtle wave, spread throughout space. Then there are sterile neutrinos, a mysterious variation of known neutrinos. If normal neutrinos are already difficult to detect, these are even more hidden, almost completely non-interacting, a nearly separate existence, yet still influencing the structure of the universe. And finally, a more striking image, primordial black holes, tiny black holes formed just after the Big Bang. Not the massive ones at galaxy centers, but small, dense, dark seeds of gravity, silent, dense, possibly everywhere. But the important thing is, even with all these ideas, we still do not have a final answer, and that is not failure. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, this is a natural part of understanding. Some things cannot be grasped immediately by reason. They must be approached through many perspectives, many images, many symbols. Just as the unconscious does not speak one language, it speaks through dreams, through emotions, through fragments, connected in deeper ways. The hypotheses about dark matter are like scientific dreams. Each one is a way the human mind tries to imagine what cannot yet be seen. Not all are correct, but each carries a piece of truth, a perspective, a possibility, and together they form a larger picture. Not complete, but slowly becoming clearer. And this brings a gentle sense of peace, because it allows us to accept that not knowing is a valid state. The absence of a final answer does not make the journey meaningless. On the contrary, it creates space for discovery, for imagination, for quiet curiosity. And as you lie there, in the stillness of the night, you may also have unanswered questions, things you do not yet understand about life, about yourself. But perhaps you do not need to rush toward answers. Just as scientists do not rush to define dark matter, they allow the question to remain open. And in that openness, there is a quiet peace, a sense that things do not need to be complete to still have meaning, like the universe, continuing to function perfectly, even without being fully understood. And if you stay with this question a little longer, what is dark matter truly? You may begin to see that it is not only a scientific question, it is a deeply human one, a question about what lies behind what we can see. Because in life we often try to name everything. What is this feeling? Where does this thought come from? Why do I react this way? We want clarity, definitions, conclusions. But sometimes, the most important things cannot be contained in a single name. According to Carl Gustav Jung, the unconscious is not an object to define. It is a field, a vast space where many elements coexist. Memories, symbols, instincts, unconscious experiences, interwoven, without clear boundaries, without a single answer. And dark matter, in a very interesting way, may be approached similarly. It may not be just one type of particle, not a single form of matter, but perhaps a system, a collection of phenomena we have yet to fully distinguish, an invisible field, influencing everything. And this brings a very gentle feeling, because it suggests that the universe is not always made of simple pieces. Sometimes it is made of complex structures that we can only understand gradually. And each hypothesis, WIMPs, axions, sterile neutrinos, primordial black holes, is like a piece of a puzzle. Not all correct, but each bringing us closer to a larger picture. A picture that may never be completely finished. And that is not something to fear. It is something peaceful, because it allows us to live in a world where mystery still exists. A world where not everything is explained. A world with space for wonder, for curiosity, for unanswered questions. And as you lie there, in the quiet of the night, you may be in a similar space. A space where you do not need to understand everything about yourself. No need to name every emotion. No need to explain every thought. Just allow them to exist, gently, without judgment. Like scientists allowing multiple hypotheses to coexist while they continue to observe, to learn, to expand their understanding. And perhaps, in that state of not knowing, your mind can begin to rest, because you no longer need to control everything, no longer need to find answers immediately. Just let your thoughts drift, like invisible particles moving through the universe. No need to hold them, no need to grasp. Just let them pass. Unresolved problems and paradoxes. When humans first began to understand dark matter, we thought we were moving closer to a complete picture of the universe, a model that could explain how galaxies form, how they move, how the universe evolves over time. And for a while, that seemed true. But then, as with many journeys of discovery, answers began to open new questions. Small details that did not fully align. Observations that did not match predictions. Gentle misalignments, just enough to make scientists pause. One of the first paradoxes is the missing satellites problem. According to dark matter models, large galaxies like the Milky Way should have hundreds of smaller satellite galaxies orbiting them. But when we observe reality, we see only a few, far fewer than expected. The galaxies that should exist do not appear, or if they do, they are too faint to be detected. It is like a map where some expected points remain empty, a quiet gap in a structure we thought we understood. Then comes another, more subtle issue, the core cusp problem. According to theory, dark matter density should rise sharply toward the center of galaxies, forming a steep cusp. But observations show something different. In many galaxies, the center is softer, a flat core instead of a sharp peak. A very small difference, but with profound meaning. As if the universe itself gently refuses to fully conform to our models. And then there are galaxies that make things even stranger. Some seem to contain very little dark matter, almost none, while others seem to contain too much, an uneven distribution, not following a simple rule, as if dark matter, though fundamental, still behaves in ways we do not fully understand. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, these paradoxes are not signs of failure, they are signs of life. Because in any system, whether the universe or the human mind, perfect consistency exists mostly in theory. Reality always contains variation, exceptions, irregularities, and those very differences open the door to deeper understanding. In psychology, Jung observed that the parts of human behavior that do not fit unexpected reactions, illogical emotions, often serve as gateways into the unconscious. They are not errors, they are signals, a way for deeper layers of the mind to be recognized. The universe is no different. The paradoxes of dark matter may not be flaws in the universe. They may be signs that our models are not yet wide enough, not yet deep enough, not yet flexible enough to embrace reality. And this brings a gentle sense of calm, because it shows that we do not need a perfect picture to continue the journey of understanding. In fact, the imperfect parts often hold the greatest potential. And as you lie there, in the quiet of the night, you may also carry paradoxes within yourself, things you do not fully understand, conflicting emotions, thoughts that are not entirely logical. But perhaps you do not need to resolve them immediately. Perhaps they are not problems to fix, but signals waiting to be heard, like the paradoxes of the universe, not here to confuse us, but to invite us to go deeper. And if you stay with these paradoxes a little longer, you may begin to feel that they are not errors in the picture of the universe. They are like pauses, moments where our understanding stops, not because nothing is there, but because we do not yet know how to see. In music, silence creates rhythm. Without pauses, there is no melody. In painting, empty space creates depth. Without it, there is no form. And in science, perhaps paradoxes are where the greatest discoveries begin. According to Carl Gustav Jung, when we face the unexplainable, the mind often reacts in two ways: to reject it or to accept it, as part of a reality not yet understood. The second path, slower but deeper, because when we accept the limits of our understanding, we open ourselves to a more flexible way of seeing, no longer confined by rigid models, no longer needing everything to be correct. And that brings a quiet sense of ease, because we are allowed to live with questions without needing immediate answers. Returning to the universe, perhaps missing galaxies are not missing. Perhaps they are telling us that galaxy formation is more complex than we imagined. Perhaps cores instead of cusps are not exceptions, but signs of interactions we do not yet fully understand between dark matter and ordinary matter. and galaxies with too much or too little dark matter may each tell different stories, different histories, different paths of cosmic evolution, as if every galaxy is its own story. And this is very much like us. No two lives unfold the same way. No one develops according to a single formula. Some change quickly, others slowly. Some emotions are clear, others take years to understand. But all of it belongs to the same inner universe. And as you lie there, in the stillness of the night, you may begin to look at the unclear parts within yourself with more gentleness. No need to call them problems. No need to fix them right away. Perhaps they are simply temporary paradoxes, unfinished parts of a larger picture, a picture you are still creating day by day. And just as scientists do not give up when things do not align, you do not need to give up on understanding yourself. Just continue observing, continue listening, and allow the unclear to exist. Dark matter in galactic structure. When we look up at the prime night sky, what we see is light, soft glowing bands of galaxies, tiny points of stars. But if you could look deeper, beyond that light, you would realize the shape of the universe is not determined by light. It is shaped by what cannot be seen. Every galaxy, spiral or elliptical, exists within a larger structure, a dark matter halo, an invisible region surrounding it, extending far beyond the visible light. And this halo is what keeps the galaxy stable, a foundation, a skeleton, silent but essential. Without it, spiral arms would not hold their shape. Everything would slowly drift apart like dust in space. But dark matter does not only hold galaxies together, it also influences how galaxies interact. When two galaxies approach, it is not just their visible parts that interact. Their dark matter halos meet first. They pass through each other, slide through one another, and in doing so they shape how galaxies merge, how new structures form. Streams of stars are stretched, curved, forming delicate stellar streams. These streams are like traces, soft lines recording the history of interaction. And what is fascinating is they reflect not only what we see, but also what we do not see. Because their shape and direction are strongly influenced by dark matter, they bend along invisible gravitational fields. They drift along currents unseen by the eye. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, this mirrors the human mind. Our thoughts and behaviors are like these streams. They appear free, conscious, but are often shaped by deeper structures, unconscious patterns, past experiences, unspoken emotions, invisible halos within us. And like stellar streams, we often do not notice these forces until we slow down, observe, listen, and perhaps recognize their presence. Connection to particle physics. When we speak of dark matter, it may feel distant, a vast invisible structure surrounding galaxies. But as we ask what it truly is, we move closer to something very small, a world of fundamental particles. And here, a new doorway opens. The idea that the universe may contain more than what we know, a hidden sector, a collection of particles and forces that do not interact directly with ordinary matter. No light, no familiar collisions, no easy detection, yet still present, parallel, silent, like another layer of reality, overlapping our own. This idea may sound like imagination, but in modern physics, it is a serious possibility, because the standard model explains much, but not everything. Not dark matter, not dark energy, not all observed phenomena. And so scientists begin to wonder, perhaps our current model is only part of the picture. Perhaps there are more pieces, more particles, more forces yet to be discovered. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, this idea is not limited to physics. It also exists within us. Alongside consciousness, there is always the unconscious, an inner world we cannot directly see, yet one that shapes everything, not separate, but intertwined, like a hidden layer of reality. And perhaps, as you rest there in the quiet, you may feel something similar, that beyond your thoughts, there are deeper layers, unnamed, unseen, a hidden inner universe, not separate from you, but part of you. And you do not need to understand it all. Not now. Just know it is there, quietly, gently, waiting to be noticed. And perhaps that is enough. Future observations. When we look toward the future of our journey to understand dark matter, there is a very particular feeling. Not urgency, not the sense that we must find the answer immediately, but a quiet preparation, a patient unfolding, as if humanity is slowly learning how to see more deeply across the earth and beyond it in space. New instruments are being built, more refined eyes, more sensitive systems, not to see dark matter directly, but to recognize its traces more clearly. One of these projects is the Vera Rubin Observatory, a telescope capable of capturing the entire sky with an unprecedented level of detail, not just once, but again and again, over time, as if observing the very slow movement of the universe, tracking how galaxies change, how light bends, how large structures gradually emerge from what once seemed like scattered data. Then there is Euclid, a space mission, traveling far from Earth to observe the universe from a quieter vantage point, unaffected by the atmosphere, undisturbed by artificial light. Euclid will map billions of galaxies in 3 dimensions, not only to see where they are, but to understand how they are arranged, how they are connected within an invisible network. And on Earth, stretching across vast landscapes, there is the Square Kilometre Array, a massive radio telescope system, listening to the faintest signals from the universe, signals that ordinary light cannot carry, as if humanity is learning to listen, not only to see. And what is most interesting is, all of these projects, though very different, share a common intention not to conquer the universe, but to understand it more deeply, to map dark matter, not by touching it, but by observing how it shapes everything around it. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, this reflects a very familiar inner process. When we begin to understand ourselves, we also cannot see everything directly. We cannot immediately understand every thought, every emotion, but we can observe, notice patterns, recognize repetition, sense connections between experiences, and slowly, a map begins to form. Not perfect, not complete, but enough to feel that everything has structure, meaning. Returning to the universe, projects like Rubin, Euclid, and the Square Kilometre Array are not just scientific tools. They are expressions of something deeply human, a desire to understand gently, without forcing, without rushing, simply observing and allowing truth to reveal itself over time. And this brings a quiet sense of peace, because it shows that understanding is not a destination. It is a process, a journey, and every small step matters. And as you lie there, in the stillness of the night, perhaps you do not need to understand everything in your life. You do not need a complete map, just little by little. Observe, notice, and allow things to become clearer over time. Just as humanity is slowly mapping dark matter, not in a single moment, but through many nights, many observations, much patience. And if you stay a little longer with the image of telescopes quietly observing the sky, you may begin to feel that they are not just machines. They are extensions of human perception, ways of learning to see the world in deeper dimensions. Because our eyes have limits, we see only a small portion of the spectrum, only what is bright enough, close enough, clear enough. But the universe is not limited that way. It exists far beyond what our natural senses can reach. And so humanity created tools to move beyond those limits. And yet these tools do not change the universe. They simply help us see more clearly what has always been there. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, this mirrors inner exploration. We do not create the unconscious. It is always present. But we can develop inner instruments, attention, awareness, quiet listening to gradually recognize it. Not all at once, not completely, but slowly, like a telescope gathering light from distant sources. Over time, the silent architecture of reality, as our journey begins to settle. What remains may not be a clear answer, but a feeling, a very gentle one, that the universe is not only made of what we can see, but also of what is always present, yet never fully revealed. Dark matter, after everything we have explored, no longer feels like a thing, not an object, not something we can fully define. It feels more like a presence, an invisible field, stretching across the universe, silent, unlit, unspoken, yet always there. And it is this presence that connects everything. Stars do not exist in isolation. They are held within galaxies. Galaxies do not drift randomly. They exist within larger structures, linked by invisible networks. And the universe, vast as it is, still has an architecture, an order, a deep coherence. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, this reflects something within us. What we are conscious of is only a small part. Beneath it, there is always a deeper foundation, an invisible structure shaping how we think, feel, and act, not as a force, but as a gentle current. And just as dark matter does not need to be seen to exist, the deepest parts of the human mind do not need to be fully conscious to have influence. They are there, quietly and deeply. And this brings a sense of peace, because it allows us to release a familiar need, the need to understand everything, to see everything, to control everything. Perhaps not everything needs to be illuminated. Perhaps part of beauty lies in what remains unseen. And as the story comes to a close, what remains may to not be an answer, but a soft realization that the universe and you are both held together by invisible things, things that are not loud, but enduring. And in that stillness, you may allow yourself to rest. No need to understand more, no need to search further. Just be there, in a vast universe that is also deeply peaceful. And now, as this journey gently ends, you may carry with you one simple thought. Not everything meaningful needs to be seen. Not everything important needs to be understood immediately. Some things only need to be felt, softly, quietly, and enough to let you rest, wishing you a deep and peaceful sleep, as if drifting among the stars, held gently by a vast and quiet universe. And if you wish to continue journeys like this each night, take a small moment to subscribe to Stories for Sleep, so that whenever you close your eyes, there is always a gentle story waiting for you, slow, deep, and full of stillness.